is dark. You can barely see anything in front of you. A smell of musty fungus appears. You look around, looking for a source of the smell, and you can't see anything. Suddenly, a flash. The room is brightened, and there they are standing in front of you.
You guys know what I'm talking about?
I'll be honest, I have never played Dungeons & Dragons before.
Like, if you're a wizard, you could cast, like, a big spell, like a fireball or something like that. If you were a barbarian or something, you might decide to, like, recklessly go berserk.
Recklessly berserk is... Yeah, that sounds good. I'm Sam Sutherland, and this is Extremely Online, a show about the internet made over the internet. Dungeons & Dragons occupies rarefied cultural air. For years, on movies and TV shows, it's been used as shorthand for nerd culture, like Star Trek or Final Fantasy, but requiring infinitely more effort to understand and really engage with. So while other pillars of traditional geek identity have slowly become the very definition of dominant popular culture, D&D has always been a little more esoteric and impenetrable. Or it used to be. You are two guys that I know because you produced, like, rap music videos. How did you end up playing Dungeons & Dragons once a week?
We got interested in it to try to develop a potential story we could tell, maybe in VR. And we actually ended up getting a grant to help conceptualize the idea, which basically allowed us to hire a dungeon master and start playing D&D once a week.
The research part ended, but we just kept going really with it.
How did you guys find a dungeon master?
One of the guys we play with was like, another server at the bar I work at says he's a dungeon master, and he actually has written his own campaign. And
I'd look at him and think, oh, you probably know a lot about wine, but really and truly, he knows a lot about just other dimensional worlds, which is awesome.
Traditionally, if you were D&D curious, you might go and check out an IRL game shop like Black Knight Games in Hamilton, Ontario. They have Magic the Gathering tournaments, they have D&D tournaments, they have Warhammer tournaments, they have tournaments for games that I have not heard of and do not understand. It's a hub for newcomers, whether you just moved to town or you just heard that Dominic Toretto is really into D&D and now you definitely have to try for yourself. Fast Five, the best in the franchise.
Would it be worth a Mystic Blast?
Certainly, if you want to. Go for it.
A lot of times people would refer to a shop like ours like a third space. It's like, you got your home, you got your work, and you got your place you go. Whenever you picture a sitcom, they always have a third spot that they go and visit, right, and hang out.
What is the role of Black Knight Games in the local Dungeons & Dragons community?
D&D has really surged in the past 5 years or so. We are one of the places that's really fostering the growth of new players. Sometimes people have a hard time finding a group, right? We're the place where you can meet people and find groups.
Before the pandemic, it was streaming on YouTube and Twitch that really got the D&D OB rolling. That is the Dungeons & Dragons online ball.
The streamers that started successfully doing D&D, the people like Critical Role and folks like that, when they started that, and it ended up being really good television, right? You're watching these actors and these personalities who are likable, and you kind of enjoy them personally, and they're telling these cool stories, right? It's entertaining.
I'd been listening to a podcast by Dan Harmon. The last 45 minutes, they would play an ongoing Dungeons & Dragons game. I'd always been peripherally interested, but then actually hearing people play it, I was like, oh, I kind of see how I see the appeal.
That helps those games grow, right? The most successful video games are often the ones that have a lot of streamers streaming them, and people watch them and fall in love with the game, and then they want to play it too.
What's so exciting about what those streams did is that they demystified Dungeons & Dragons. First of all, they made it clear that you could experience this game that was so tied to being in a suburban basement through your laptop, on a computer, whether you were playing or you were just watching. And the other thing is it demystified some of those barriers. The idea that D&D was only for a certain type of person, that you needed to be so enmeshed in the history of this game that had been around since 1974. That was the only way you could play. And all of a sudden it was very obvious that that was not the case.
I've myself been a big Dungeons & Dragons enthusiast since I was a little girl. My sister and I both learned from our dad. I started playing when I was 6. And the first session we played, a group of my friends and I all played together with my sister, and we ended up just killing each other instead of ever getting to the dungeon. I mean, I talk to people who've been traditionally excluded from those spaces who are in my friend groups, and they're getting into Dungeons & Dragons, but they're saying, you know, I've watched 3 seasons of Critical Role, so I feel like I've got a little bit of a handle of the rules, and they are not entering those first campaigns, you know, killing each other and not getting even to the drawbridge of the castle they're supposed to go through, but they're entering those first campaigns with an idea that they're engaging in a collective storytelling experience, and they've seen what that can be like, and they've seen the richness of success, and that's because it's become a part of, you know, the media available culturally. That's the internet. We have to thank for that. I love the idea of the game growing bigger and more inclusive, being a story that gets to be told by more folk, and I think it's very, very conducive to an online environment.
Before the current situation that we find ourselves in, where every single aspect of your life happens through a video chat conducted, you know, from the comfort of your couch, platforms like Roll20 were offering a tricked out virtual tabletop D&D experience.
One of my clients was like, well, my brother lives in Oregon. Can we use this thing called Roll20? I was like, yeah, I've heard of Roll20, but I couldn't believe how much work it was. In Roll20, people are expecting to see something with their eyes, right? Because they're staring at a computer screen. I make sure that I have handouts, you know, that I have artwork, you know, the right music going at the right time.
The emphasis in the very first online game I played was to render, you know, a gorgeous map that your people can play on. They went to like render 3D models of every single person involved. And that's neat, and it has its place, but technological challenges can be a huge limitation, and on a game that's supposed to be so immersive, it's very important to keep coming back to that core of collected storytelling experience. And I just want to see the look on your face when I, you know, scar you emotionally with the horror and the catharsis of the end of your vampire campaign, or the death of that one NPC you fell in love with, like that kind of moment.
I think people are actually adapting as well. People have learned to talk to each other via Zoom. So I can describe something, you know, I can say, okay, you step into, you know, a dark alleyway. There's wet cobblestones on the ground. You know, there's a slight rain coming down and a little bit of mist coming out of your left side. The mist starts to congeal and coagulate, and it turns into a wraith. The black as night. It reaches a hand out to rip your soul into pieces, right? It becomes far more vivid when you describe something than when you show them a picture in terms of that kind of world space.
While some of the games that John DMs might just involve connecting players from opposite ends of the city, the magic of high-speed internet means that you could just as easily be connecting players from opposite ends of the world.
Dungeons & Dragons has always existed in a virtual world in some ways, because it's always existed in the shared sort of collected unconscious that we're creating together, right?
You know, I have a client in Japan, and then one of the players is in Ireland. They really love the guy in Ireland. We all do. He's just so awesome. And it's a way for them to like bring him into their family once a week.
I know James in Ireland. We just weren't seeing each other enough. So this has become a really nice reason for us to all stay up to date and see each other.
I have friends who I played Dungeons & Dragons with in college who can now connect over Zoom, or who can have conversations and calls where we're playing the same games and enjoying the same experiences that were what brought us together and taught us things about ourselves that were important.
Last weekend I ran a bachelor party. People were all over the country. They're all drinking and smoking and having a great time, but they're doing it while playing D&D with each other over Roll20. You can obviously do like a Zoom party and everybody can sort of stare at each other and take turns asking, hey, how you doing? You know, if you wrap it around a game like this, people have a communal, mutual experience, and you know, you feel like you've actually been on a journey together.
Even though the internet has allowed Dungeons & Dragons to transcend space, it hasn't fundamentally altered the gameplay. It's still essentially the same as it was when it came out in 1974. I'm walking around my house and thinking about what here is possibly the same since 1974. Maybe the fridge? But like, probably not. Did they have microwaves in 1974? I don't know. That's not what this television show is about. As a result, it's just as easy to imagine Dungeons & Dragons existing right out to the horizon line of the future, just incorporating new technologies to do what it has always done.
In Dungeons & Dragons, we win by telling a cool story together and by having a collective experience that we're all looking for.
It's actually especially beneficial for people who actually are in different places in the world, and then suddenly they're all together, right? They're all watching the meteors fall from the sky and seeing a 12-foot Balor stomp towards them with its wings outspread and the flaming sword about to cut them in half. So they're all seeing that in their minds, and they're just not here. They're just not sitting at their desk anymore. You know, they're all holding hands, shivering. As if you're all imagining the same thing, you are all in the same place. And I think that is where the magic happens.
No matter how the world advances, we're really just trying to find new ways to tell each other's stories. There's something very charming about the fact that there's nothing on your super-powered, built-from-scratch gaming rig or your 70-inch TV that can compete with the pure joy of someone around a campfire sticking a flashlight under their face and inviting you into a new world. And with the ability to easily connect with anyone from everywhere, you can build your own campfire with anyone from anywhere.
All right, I enter the space and approach the monster, greatsword in hand, wielding it with both of my hands, wiping the sweat off my brow and stepping forward. Is there anything I see about him? Anything I can identify in terms of a weakness?
The neck is really exposed. There's a very soft neck on the monster.
All right, I reach the sword high above my head, swinging with all of my might, letting the magic channel through my blood and my muscles.
Now it has 2 heads. It's grown 2 heads where there used to be 1. I'm apparently not great at this.
I step back from the terrible Hydra-like creature, recoiling in doubt at my own capacity. I don't know if we're gonna make it, folks.